from the accused's own statements, because we do not need it. But the passages accepted by the court were necessary in order to bring out even more distinctly the absurdity of his claim, in order to refute anything, he said, which is anyway without any connection with truth. The passages which were corrected by him show beyond any shadow of doubt that before this court there is not only a murderer of millions, but an inveterate liar who, when pressed to the wall by documents, might make a theatrical gesture and to pay lip service to justice, saying that though he is innocent, he is certainly ready to take the guilt upon himself, in order that people shouldn't think that he was trying to extricate himself from responsibility. Eichmann himself says in his police statement that in the presence of Mildner he met journalist Sassen, and together they were examining and pondering on the problems pertaining to extermination. In reply, in the course of the cross-examination, he said himself that he spoke to Sassen in order to reach certain truth in the statement. He said that he was correcting the statement in full quiet and serenity, that he introduced hundreds of corrections when he was quite free to think, and particularly certain corrections showing purely technical matters, chrome instead of crume, little things show that this was not the first draft, that this was very painstakingly corrected, that it was corrected in all the essential matters. And he said that this was to be a basis for a book that he was about to write. The authenticity of the Sassen document is quite clear. Anybody reading Sassen will get full confirmation of thousands of documents, evidence given by Hess and Wislicenny, all pertaining to the central figure in the extermination of the Jews.
The things were doubted from his own mouth, and it is evidently so. The various expressions to keep the fire going, to ride men as one would ride a winter sledge, these systems of extermination, and so on. They all identify the prints and the way of speech of the accused. President of Court, do you want the court to revise the decision given by us? Mr. Hausner, no, my request is that the parts read to the accused, wherein there were not enough corrections to be identified by the accused as made by him, were also said by the accused and are correct. Although as far as his task and assignment are concerned, his authority, the parts admitted by court finally will suffice. In conclusion, as far as the general argumentation is concerned and his part in this system of extermination, from the approach as Eichmann as a liar, then these things I request the court to accept them and to regard them as true. But even without those documents, there is a whole row of proof and evidence regarding his part in this extermination, barring the way before the accused, all way of extorting himself. Hettel, a commander in Department 6, testifies that Eichmann was the man authorized by the RSHA and Himmler to arrest the Jews in Europe and to have them transferred to Germany. When Hettel continues, he goes on to say that this deportation was concluded with the extermination of the Jews. Hettel never revised his words when he was questioned as a witness. He said that matters of the Jews was in the exclusive authority of Eichmann and regarded him as the chief forwarding agent to death. In Wislicenny's declarations, Eichmann's activities are described in detail by a man who was once his superior and later on was his subordinate. The two were great friends and acted jointly. Wislicenny himself admitted to many offenses, and it is to be assumed that he knew what to expect before the Czech court. His declarations tally with all what we know from documents which he did not have before him. Wislicenny did not have them when he testified. Wislicenny declared that Eichmann had it in his hands to order the extermination of the Jewish people. He repeated these words at Nuremberg and testified that he saw an order to Himmler to stop the extermination of the Jews. And in that letter it said, this is what Wislicenny says, that this was the duty of the head of the security police and the commander of the SD. Eichmann said that he personally was responsible to implement this order before the RSHA and got his orders from the security office, the headquarters. This goes hand in hand absolutely with all his testimony. These two, Wislicenny and Hess, they were questioned separately, and they could not suit their words one to the other. Hess was a man who dealt with concentration camps, and he testified that Himmler informed him that Eichmann would come to discuss the details of extermination, and that the necessary arrangements should be made at Auschwitz. Wislicenny and Hess both point to two basic links: the RSHA acting through Eichmann and the supervision of concentration camps before the head office for economy and administration was set up, and they both were the axis of the implementation of extermination. Wislicenny and Hess both go on describing the devotion shown by Eichmann to his task and assignment. Wislicenny describes the way Eichmann treated his subordinates, his friendship with Krauss, about the recommendation we already mentioned, his great power, his close relations between Eichmann and Kaltenbrunner. And then Wislicenny goes on to describe Eichmann's wish to have cover to prepare coverage and be covered by an order. Something about this desire for coverage we heard from the accused himself when he told the superintendent of the police, when they discussed his conversations with his superiors, and he said, and I quote, "Yes, this because I needed cover." The whole file is covered by the very fact that the superior orders this. But I am only the tool to execute orders, because in any case I was only the implementing tool. Let us go back to the question of his status. Rudolf Hess describes Eichmann's position in his autobiography regarding to this extermination activities. The pressure brought about by Eichmann to carry out extermination speedily, and the struggle conducted by Eichmann untiringly to reach the final aim as quickly as possible. Eichmann goes on to describe that all he aimed and all he strived was to arrive at the final solution. Here is what he said. And this is a quotation which was admitted by court. In Holland, first the wheels moved in a grand way at first. Later obstacles cropped up. It is impossible to describe how difficult this was until finally the train started moving again. This could be seen in every country. 10,000 were removed, and then a struggle had to be conducted. Then once again a deportation of 10 or 15,000 would arrive. Then once again a struggle until a further number of Jews were sent on. And thus it went on and on. This is Eichmann's struggle. Frank, the ruler of Poland, wants to leave behind a number of Jews for labor. The German industry needs a number of Jews. In Holland they need Jewish experts. The munitions industry demand Jews as workers. The administrator of the railways cannot supply the necessary carriages, and the Office for Administration and Economy wants to conduct selections to harness Jews to work as slaves. Eichmann insists stubbornly that he must fight all the time and fight everybody to implement his own plan. And as Sassen said, that even his own men he had to convince repeatedly, again and again. This is what he told Sassen.
But when he spoke to the representative of the Red Cross, then to him he also seems the central figure in Jewish matters. And in official reports of this institution, he's referred to as the very center of the anti-Jewish action, that he is the direct representative of Reichsführer SS in all matters pertaining to Jewry. According to the definition of a man from the International Red Cross, Eichmann was the man responsible for the extermination machine. Already in October 1941, his name is heard by Jewish emigration in London, and as it was pointed out in the paper Die Zeit, he was responsible for the murder of Jews in Germany. He was the central figure in extermination, about whom Abba Kovner heard from Schmidt. Zimmermann in Krakow heard it in 1941 from Gestapo men. And there were many others in that period who heard that he was the central figure.
President of Court, if you have a reference or a case in connection with these rumors, the court would like to have it.
Very willingly, Your Honor. It is our claim that every one from these documents taken apart.
President of Court, I refer to your last words, that rumors had it and that it was known to everyone, and what you mentioned from witnesses who testified in court. You will remember, Mr. Hausner, that I raised the question at the time. What value, what probative value have these words?
Each one of these pieces of evidence taken apart is devoid of value, of course, even if the court avails itself of its authority in accordance with Article number 5, because we don't know from whom they heard it, from whom the man of Gestapo heard about it, or from whom the man who spoke to Dr. Davinsky heard it. But all those pieces of evidence taken together and lumped together are depicting a clear picture in London or anywhere else, in an official document, in the Zeitung, also in the subjugated Europe, in camps, in documents stemming from the German Ministry for Foreign Affairs and other institutions of the Reich. All this lumped together, Your Honor, is of importance. All this lumps into a certain framework which gives a clear picture. Each drop is of importance. Perhaps it is a small item, but if they come together, they merge and blend together into one concrete entity.
President of Court, and this according to paragraph 15. Mr. Hausner, yes, of course.
The legend about a man who was born in Israel or Palestine, as it were, who spoke Yiddish and Hebrew, was already heard in Sosnovitz. Eichmann was saying to Vesiceni jocularly that the Jews believe him when he tells them a cock and bull story like this. This is the evidence to be found on page 4. Even the news that Eichmann was to visit the deportation center already in 1941 cast horror on Jews, and it was arranged the Jews should be queuing up in front of the house so that he should see who is earmarked for emigration. Johann Klapper, the German writer, approached Eichmann in 1941, asking him not to deport his wife. The Minister of the Interior himself had to intervene so that Klapper should be received an audience by Eichmann. What happened afterwards is common knowledge. He was not able to help his family. Dr. Grieber, too, intervened on Jewish matters, and also the wife of Grieber implored him that her husband should be released from the concentration camp. We hear from Dr. Perens that Imre and Daki in Budapest also said that he was the one who was conducting the campaign of extermination of Hungarian Jewry. the Nazi big shots testified to him alone, not to Miller. I should like to draw the court's attention to this fact. Though the two of them had disappeared, had vanished into thin air, as it were, and the two of them could be regarded as a scapegoat if such intention was to be found. And as we heard from Judge Musmano, Goering said that Eichmann was one of the 5 people who bore central responsibility for the extermination. He was the one, together with Bormann, Hitler, Heinrich and Goebbels. Goering pointed out that Eichmann's position was particularly important in the establishing of the timing of deportations and the determining of the countries where deportations were to be carried out, and this tallies absolutely with all the other documents and reports were on various meetings of experts on Jewish problems where those questions were decided upon. What Goering said is certainly bolstered by documents and supported by them fully. Kaltenbrunner too showed that he was the man. Ribbentrop, also the repentant Frank at Nuremberg, said to Judge Musmano that Himmler would always approach Eichmann so far as Jews are concerned. He intervened on behalf of Jews, but would go back empty-handed. It was Eichmann who ordered that the POWs, pilots of Jewish nationality, were to be exterminated. Also, Musmano said that Eichmann was actually responsible for all the activities of Einsatzgruppen so far as Jews were concerned. Gilbert, the psychologist of the Nuremberg jail, heard exactly the same statements as reported by Musmano. He too said that Goering had mentioned Eichmann as one of the persons chiefly responsible for the extermination. That Paul, the director of Administrative and Economic Office, said that Eichmann and Kaltenbrunner were those who were chiefly responsible for all activities pertaining to extermination. The court will recall the statement of Gilbert that Hess couldn't describe any action against the Jews, couldn't describe orally or in writing without mentioning Eichmann. He couldn't reconstruct any of those activities without referring to the lion's share of the accused in all these operations. And so far as Hess is concerned, he was requested by Goering to explain how it was possible to exterminate 2.5 million people in Auschwitz. In a document spreading over 1.5 pages, Hess is mentioning Eichmann as a pivot of these activities. Gilbert also explained the circumstances and the state of mind of Hess when he was writing these lines. He said that he had no intention whatsoever to shift responsibility on anybody else. He described him as outspoken. He described him as a man who just made these statements without any ulterior motive. The Minister of the Interior in Hungary declared that Himmler informed him that Eichmann together with Winkelmann are in Hungary. He also described the impudence, how Eichmann was asked about his authority. He relied on this authority and demanded the handing over of the remaining Jews. Is there any sense to the thought that all of those put their hands together all over Europe to
shift the blame onto an officer in charge of timetables only. Gustav Noske testifies he was the man to draw up the reports, and he testified that such reports were sent on especially to Eichmann. The Wannsee Conference, where not one of the commanders of concentration camps participated, and nor from the Department of Economy and Administration, it is said that once again proof for the part played by Eichmann in this bloody actions and his central position and assignment. In the protocol itself, it says clearly that the referent, the expert of the RSHA office, will act in these matters hand in hand with the Foreign Office. And who is this expert, this authorized person of the Head Security Office of the Reich? Who the participants of Wannsee assigned this task. When questioned by the police, where not one of the commanders of concentration camps participated, and nor from the Department of Economy and Administration, it is said that once again proof for the part played by Eichmann in this bloody actions and his central position and assignment. In the protocol itself, it says clearly that the referent, the expert of the RSHA office, will act in these matters hand in hand with the Foreign Office. And who is this expert, this authorized person of the Head Security Office of the Reich? Who the participants of Wannsee assigned this task. When questioned by the police, Eichmann said, "I was the man." Heydrich, in his letters at the time and in the same subject, says Eichmann is the authority in these matters, and this in continuation of the implementation of the plan. Later on he goes on saying Eichmann is the man in authority. His argument in court that he was at the conference like a baby, not understanding what was going on, only taking record, and in order to wash himself clean, this only calls for derision. He himself wrote in his memoirs that Ginter was there to help with the drawing up of the record. Now he tries to get Ginter out of the list of the participants at all costs. But what was discussed at this conference? The future activities of the accused. And in fact, it could not have been otherwise. When questioned, after he tried to extort himself in connection with the all RSHA setup, he had to admit that it was his department and his department only in charge of all Jewish matters. It was natural and understood that the man heading the office to carry out extermination will also be the man to act and to be in charge of the exterminations. That is why Eichmann is Heydrich's special representative for this matter. As Heydrich expressed himself, he continued to be the special representative for the RSHA in Kaltenbrunner's days. and also in Kaltenbrunner's table in the list of Düsseldorf documents. Eichmann repeats and says stubbornly, there were others as well. There were, I admit, hundreds and thousands of them, small and in high offices, of greater influence and of lesser influence. There were the foreign ministers, finance, railways, justice. There were other ministries and other offices within the RSHA and with all through the state ministries. And all of them together joined activities in this work of the devil. One cannot avoid this conclusion, and if the counsel for the defense tried to stress this, then he tries to burst into an open door. Without full cooperation, this harvest of blood could not have been carried out. But this does not diminish the central responsibility of Eichmann and his heavy accusation. And then, in continuation to the Wannsee conference, the expert acted in all directions, all over Europe. Europe was combed as decided. Jews were located, marked, and put into camps. Then the matter of sterilization was taken up. In Poland, a large-scale extermination was carried out according to orders from Berlin. Ghettos were liquidated, and Ghetto Warsaw was liquidated, where 500,000 souls lived. Eichmann knows that we have in our hands documents of the foreign ministry, the German foreign ministry, which show and speak for his activities. He knows well that thousands of his files and documents, Gestapo documents, not all of them are in our hands. This he knows because he burned them with his own hands. Therefore, he tried to put forward the theory that within the limits of the general gouvernement, he had to deal only with foreign nationals. And this is not so, because in the government of Frank there was also the foreign ministry, the German foreign minister, and there was no need for a central activities from the Berlin Gestapo with foreign nationals. But Eichmann wants to diminish his responsibility as far as possible. Therefore, he tries to explain all the documents connected with the liquidation of the Warsaw Ghetto, that he was dealing with foreign nationals. But he could not explain, when questioned in cross-examination, what was his business with the certificates of death issued to Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto. When he was asked why does he have to affix his signature when the Warsaw Ghetto is concerned, he could not explain.
And when I asked him why did he write that circumstances required that the inhabitants of that ghetto be insulated, he replied that he did not remember, and that apparently someone must have planned relocation activities. And when I asked him why he had written that he was about to issue further instructions concerning the Warsaw Ghetto, he replied that he was not the man concerned but Müller. And when he was asked why 4B4 was issuing instructions about the employment of Jewish workers in the Beskides Mountains, again he did not remember. He drafted the letter as he had been ordered, he said. But all of these are vain excuses. The truth is that Eichmann dealt with the problems of the Jews in the government general area just as he dealt in the affairs of the Jews in all of occupied Europe, just as it was decided at the Wannsee Conference. Possibly in the government general area there was no need to struggle as much. Later on I shall quote from the Frank document, and I hope to prove that the Gestapo ruled this area at least until the middle of 1943 and was in charge of all Jewish affairs, and it did not need Frank. They had good people to execute these matters there. Amon Goeth, the man who exterminated the Jews of Krakow in southwest Poland. Katzman, the man who annihilated the Jews of Lvov in southeastern Poland. And above all of them, his beloved friend Globocnik, in whose area of jurisdiction the concentration and death camps were constructed. Eichmann claims that he had brought to this man Globocnik's orders dictated and drafted by Eichmann, including a retroactive authority for the killing of 150 or 250 Jews each time. He wants us to believe that Globocnik exterminated on his own initiative about 500,000 or 750,000 people, and later on, post facto, requested authorization for this from Heydrich or from Müller. Naturally, this is not at all plausible. Eichmann indeed saw to it that Globocnik would have the written orders necessary for the extermination, and to the extent that Globocnik exceeded his quota, he may have brought him the retroactive formal cover. President of Court, do we have any specific formal proof about Eichmann's share in what was called Operation Reinhard? Mr. Hausner, specific, Your Honor, that is to say Eichmann and his share in Operation Reinhard? Your Honor means direct proof.
Yes.
No, this we do not have, but there exists a construction which I believe can withstand the test of reality and logic, and this is the construction. At the Wannsee Conference it was decided that the operations for the extermination of Jews in the government general area will be directed by the RSHA. And not only was it decided this way, but as I shall show later on when I get to this chapter, Frank's representative even asked that this action be carried out there.
Dr. Bühler.
Yes, that was Dr. Bühler. Eichmann was the competent referent. He admitted it. There is no way of getting around that. Now, he tells the following story. There, in the government general area, this was somehow carried out above my head. There was some kind of agreement between Himmler and Krieger, and they somehow sent the people. I didn't even know how it was done. So I asked, why did he deal in the matter of the foreign nationals? And why did his department deal with the matter of the Baskides mountains? And why did Globocnik apply to Heydrich and not to Krieger for the orders to exterminate Jews, retroactive or otherwise? And why is it that Frank complains bitterly, as I shall show through quotations from his diary? I can't, I have no control here. You do all of this from Berlin. And he complained to Krieger. And he said, this entire operation is being directed from Berlin. I am not even permitted to go into the extermination camps.
President of Court, extermination started there before the Wannsee Conference.
It began at Chelmno before Wannsee, and we have direct proof that he is connected with Chelmno because we have the testimony of Rudolf Höss that Eichmann went to visit Chelmno, and Blobel showed him the installations at Chelmno by permission of Eichmann.
Judge Halevi, I understood that Chelmno was not within the general government.
That is true, Chelmno was in the Wartegau, but Chelmno was one of the extermination camps connected with the annihilation of the Jews from the government general area, although not the Reinhardt operation.
President of Court, I believe that this was in the Wartegau, eingegliederte Gebiete.
Yes, it was in the eingegliederte Gebiete in the annexed areas.
Part of the Reich.
Yes, it was part of the Reich.
Part of the Reich.
Yes. The means for obscuring the traces and effacing the traces and burning the documents by the Gestapo did not quite efface the part played by Eichmann in the bloody actions in Poland. Now, what does the evidence presented by the defense say in this matter? We have the testimony of Karl-Heinz Hoffmann. It was presented by the defense. Hoffmann testifies as a man of the RSHA that Eichmann was the man of the RSHA in every Jewish matter, that he had special representatives with all the commanders of the security police, and that every single deportation of the Jews was carried out by him and administered by him. The testimony of Mildner is even more far-reaching. This affidavit as well was presented by the defense. We were not in a position to submit it because in view of its contents we knew that the court would certainly demand an opportunity of examining the man, and in the absence of tested information about his whereabouts and his address, we suspect that he is in Argentina, but we were not in a position to submit the document. Apparently, however, the defense attorney accepts Lindner's statement without further examination because he submitted it. Now, what do we read in this affidavit? It says that Eichmann was Himmler's referent and that of the chief of the security police, as well as that of chief of Bureau 4 in all Jewish affairs, that he was Himmler's representative in all the matters pertaining to the deportations to the camps in all the different countries, and that he was the liaison man with all the senior commanders of the SS and the police in every Jewish matter. The affidavit is the same Mildner about whom Eichmann said in his statement on page 1757, "We were great friends." This testimony links up with the documents known to us, such as the directive given to the commander of the police and the senior commander of the SS and police in Agram, and the instructions to those commanders to detain all the Jews of Argentine nationality.
President of Court, Mr. Hausner, this is the time to call for a recess. What have you to say in regard to the order of the proceedings?
If the court gives me another 15 minutes, I can get to a convenient point to interrupt, but otherwise, of course, I shall do as the court pleases.
We prefer to adjourn now.
Of course, Your Honor, I'm now in the middle of analyzing defense testimonies, but as the court pleases.
This is not too serious, and we shall be able to renew the contact after the break.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We shall adjourn now, and the coming session is today at 3:30.